Chapter 11. The Watchers. The light of the hidden realm dimmed as thick clouds rolled in overhead, casting shadows over the ancient forest. Decima felt the shift instantly, like something had closed a curtain between her and the sun. The air turned cooler, quieter. Even the birds had stopped singing. Daniel was tense beside her, his jaw tight as he scanned the treetops. "What is it?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "We're being watched," he said, his voice low and steady. Decima turned in a slow circle, her eyes darting through the thickening woods. "By what?" "Not what. Who?" He stepped in front of her, his posture shifting into something more defensive. "Don't make any sudden moves." She narrowed her eyes, annoyed despite the nerves tightening in her chest. "You do realize I'm not some helpless girl?" His lips twitched, but his eyes remained alert. "No, but they don't know that yet." Then came the sound, barely audible, like leaves brushing against each other, but it came from all directions, like a ripple through the forest. Whisper-thin voices speaking in a language she didn't know, but somehow understood. "She has returned. It cannot be." The spell is cracked. Figures stepped out from the trees, their movements fluid and silent. Cloaked in bark and moss, they blended seamlessly into their surroundings. Their eyes gleamed like liquid silver, sharp and otherworldly. They were tall, their bodies thin and elongated, moving with an eerie grace. They weren't human, but neither were they alien. They were something else entirely, something older, more ancient. Magic clung to them like a scent, a presence that made the air around Decima hum. Daniel didn't bow, but he lowered his head slightly, acknowledging them with a quiet respect. "Guardians," he said softly. She came through the archway. The path recognized her. One of the Watchers moved forward, their steps soundless. "She wears the pendant." Decima stood her ground, stepping up beside Daniel, refusing to shrink back in the face of their scrutiny. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but her heart pounding in her chest. The Watcher studied her for a long moment. "We are the ones who kept the way sealed, until the time of return." "Return of what?" Decima pressed, her curiosity growing despite the strange unease that wrapped around her. "The bond. The balance. The truth buried in blood and shadow," the Watcher replied cryptically, their voice deep and resonant, as if the words carried ancient weight. Daniel spoke again, his tone firm, his frustration seeping through despite his calm demeanor. "She's only just begun to awaken. She needs guidance, not riddles." The Watcher's gaze shifted from Decima to Daniel, narrowing as they studied him with something akin to recognition. "And yet you walk beside her, the one marked by flame." A long pause followed. The air thickened with the weight of their words. Then they turned back to Decima. "We will watch. We will wait. But if the bond fails again, the forest will not forgive it." With that, the Watchers stepped backward, their movements fluid and swift, disappearing into the trees like mist dispersing in sunlight. Decima exhaled shakily, the tension in her body finally releasing as the forest returned to its eerie silence. "Well, that wasn't creepy at all." Daniel managed a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You impressed them." She raised an eyebrow, still processing the encounter. "I didn't do anything. You stood your ground. That's more than most do their first time." She looked back into the forest, where the Watchers had been moments ago, their presence lingering in the air like a warning. "They said the bond failed before." Daniel's face darkened slightly, and for the first time since they'd arrived in this world, he seemed vulnerable, as if the weight of the past was pressing on him more than he was willing to show. "It did, a long time ago." "What happened?" Her voice was quiet, but the question felt like a stone sinking in her chest. He hesitated, his gaze distant, caught between the present and the past. "Let's just say, not everyone survived it." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with unspoken history. Decima didn't press him. The weight in his voice, the shadow in his eyes, told her more than any words could. The bond. The connection between the magic, the forest, and her. It had failed once before, and the consequences were dire. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of something far bigger than she could comprehend. Untruth buried deep within the heart of this place, waiting for her to uncover it. But was she ready to face it? Was she ready to be the key to a balance that had been slipping for so long? Daniel's presence beside her grounded her, but his words had unsettled her. He knew more about what she was meant to be than she did, and every new revelation brought more questions, more uncertainty. The Watchers, the guardians of the path, had been clear. The bond had failed before. If it failed again, there would be no turning back. The weight of that responsibility pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. "What happens if the bond fails again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel turned to face her, his eyes softening with understanding. "Then the forest will fall apart. The balance of magic, the very foundation of this place, will crumble, and everything that relies on it will follow." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "Everything, including us." Decima's heart raced. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. It wasn't just her life at risk. It was the hard world she had just stepped into. "We can't let that happen," she said, the words coming from a place deep inside her, a place she hadn't known existed until now. "We won't." Daniel smiled, his eyes flashing with something akin to hope. "I know," he said softly. "We'll make sure of it." The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the echoes of the Watcher's words lingering in the air. The path forward was clear now, but it was also unpredictable. And Decima, for all her uncertainty, knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now.